John 1:10 says, He, meaning Jesus, He came into the world, and even though the world came into being through His agency, people didn't acknowledge Him as Creator or God. This is an astounding oversight and failure, and probably even deliberate refusal. How could they miss that their Creator and God was standing right in front of them? There are several explanations for this. Number one comes from Philippians 2:7, which says that He emptied Himself when He came to the earth and took the form of a servant. Basically, that means He came incognito, under the radar, sort of in disguise. Secondly, Romans 1:21 indicates that they refused to see. 2 Corinthians 3:14 says that their eyes are veiled and they are spiritually blind. But let's talk about these. Why all the secrets and the hiddenness? Why incognito? I say it has to be this way because people have to respond to Him out of faith and love, or the response is false. And if they have to respond out of faith and love, then He has to stay hidden and woo them and reveal Himself in ways that demand faith as a response. You see, people make a choice. Even though there is evidence of God, that evidence is refutable. Though God has revealed Himself through more than natural revelation, which includes special revelation, that evidence is also refutable. But when it comes right down to it, all evidence in all of our disciplines is ultimately irrefutable. People make a choice about what to believe. Paul argues that people had enough evidence to go on as far as not just believing in God, but knowing Him. But instead, they intentionally rebelled and followed a path of their own choosing. And because they rejected the truth, their thinking and knowledge became perverted, meaning corrupted and distorted from what it originally had been. I guess we would say it became secular. Certainly still knowledge and truth, but futile, missing pieces that are supposed to be there. They were living in the shadows, seeing only part of the picture. By their own choice, obfuscation, and refusal. See, atheists and wandering Christians ask me this question all the time. Why doesn't God just make Himself clearly known? I would respond in faith if He made Himself clear, but I respond this way. God appearing and having a friendly conversation with you wouldn't do it. Let's go back to the very beginning. Isn't it astounding that some spiritual beings who knew God by experience, could see Him and could hear Him, knew His goodness, His greatness and in power, could rebel against God and abandon their positions, as Jude verse 6 says, in defiance against God? How is that possible? There weren't even any filters, as far as we know, between them and God, and yet they turned against Him. It's obvious to me that even a direct experience with God doesn't make it certain that one will follow Him. Irrefutable evidence doesn't help them to be believers. James 2:19 talks about demons who believe in God, sure enough, but don't follow Him. They know all about Him, so we can assume, and yet they don't follow God or believe in Him in any sense of love and obey. We know that the children of Israel, who were part of the Exodus, got to see spectacular wonders of God's miraculous doings, pretty close to those friendly conversations people might want. And yet many of them, close to all of them, were rebellious and unfaithful. We also know that thousands of people got to see Jesus, hear Him speak, watch Him do miracles, and yet they didn't all turn into being disciples. In other words, God revealing Himself to people in a way that undoubtedly gives us evidence of His existence is no guarantee of a future relationship. Oftentimes, as it turns out, it's often detrimental. God speaking to people seems only to be effective when the person is already in relationship with God or open to a relationship with God. And if they aren't, God speaking to them, having a friendly conversation, doesn't seem to make any difference at all. Oddly enough. Often, it actually seems to make things worse. We come to God most reliably, it turns out, other than through our eyes and ears. Ultimately, what God is interested in is relationship. Not that the evidence convinces you of his existence. In a sense, big deal that you acknowledge he exists. What he wants is a relationship with you, and that is best achieved through the mind and the heart, not through the eyes and the ears. Let's talk about this.